I'm Jake Bird, here talking with Kyle Mason, and we're basically just following up from a conversation we had on Facebook concerning an article that he posted from The Intercept on why Trump was right that the TPP benefits China. And it was a pretty interesting conversation, is focusing pretty much on how they might work around it and some of the policies with the trade. And as far as my part in it, I wasn't really that much convinced about it, at least from the workings inside the trade. And that's what I primarily attacked. And and correct me if I'm wrong, but you came more out of it from the perspective part of controlling China, their role in the trade in the Asian sector.
Right, it was more
US just
geopolitical.
Want to be in it.
Yeah, it was more geopolitical. It wasn't necessarily about the numbers. You broke it. You broke down the trade agreement like with the fine print. I thought I was talking to a lawyer, but my perspective was more about like geopolitical and from that angle. Actually, control over the high seas and whatnot.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to kind of expound on it first, or do you want me to?
No, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, the article, was about the last Republican debate where they went back and forth, and I'm a Rand Paul supporter, but when he said that we should point out that China's not in the actual agreement, it was kind of like it was a big aha moment for Rand Paul, but I kind of thought he was wrong, and I kind of thought at the end of the day he was supporting what Trump was saying, and then this article came out, and so that's pretty much where we are. So we were talking, and these comments kept getting longer and longer, to the point where it was like, okay, well, we're not done here. Let's just make a video of it. So, and finally, like, it's been about a week. About a week later. Yeah. Or actually a little over a week. Yeah, sorry. I'm going through time warp here. Yeah, it's been a little over the week. So if you want to kick it off, by all means.
Well, let's see. First thing is, I don't really think he was supporting Trump. And one of the things I said in my comments is I found it kind of a interesting irony to invoke the title. Trump was right about the TPP benefiting China, and then mention his through the back door comment, because when you talk about through the back door, that means doing something illegally or dishonestly. So when you're saying the TPP will benefit China, it's got to be written in the law in a dishonest way, or one that would be written illegal. And at least when I was coming from it from the points of fact, the only one that I gave them like legitimate credit for was at the end about enforcing the actual laws and the regulations for the origins and stuff. But that would be, going around the TPP. That's not exactly benefiting it.
Right. Yeah, it's not going through the actual legal writing of it.
But one of the things that I was curious about, and I still wonder about, is how would that be more of a risk compared to other trade agreements like NAFTA, for instance, where the origin idea kind of originates from. What percentage must the product have of the originating country to be considered original? When we did that with like Mexico and Canada, and we put 65% as the limit for normal passenger vehicles.
Right.
We weren't worried that Cuba or Argentina were going to muscle their way in. There was a concern about China there as well. So, you would have to actually point out, how is this more deficient as far as enforcement goes compared to those other trade agreements?
Yeah. So, okay, so just from the beginning, I think, so we were we had two different definitions of backdoor. Because,
Okay.
well, like you said that you didn't see it explicitly written about how they're going to. Okay, repeat what you said about how it being explicitly written in the document, how China is directly going to benefit from it.
Through the back door is usually used like in an illegal or a dishonest manner. And as far
Right.
as I can tell from my reading of the documents, which is by no means extensive, there's no written in procedure for them to do that.
Yeah. So my definition of through the back door was that no, it's not. It's not written in there. That it's not written in there, but it's the indirect way or through the back door how they could get, for instance, their steel or their rubber manufacturing in through these countries that will be, and I have a feeling that they are going to pass the TPP in those countries. I think that's why it's taking so long to negotiate, because they wanted a for sure thing once they sent it out. But China has stiff tariffs on their exports, certain exports that gathered enough special interest in the United States to block them through tariffs. Steel, certain manufactured parts, rubber, things, coal, things of this nature that came from China that China can produce within its borders, that it can produce and ship to America cheaper. So they had tariffs put up, special interests like the Steel Workers Union, Auto Workers Union for parts and things like this, put up tariffs. So through the TPP, the way I was reading it, and I think that's what Donald Trump was getting at, how I took it through the back door, was China is now going to manufacture parts or use the steel and sell it to these countries, or produce it in China, sell it to these countries where things are put together or manufactured, and they get to that certain amount of limit, 45%, 35%, whatever it happens to be in the end, and then shipped to America, no tariffs. So it brings down the costs much more. And not that I'm for tariffs by any means. Let's not get this wrong. We've actually brought that up in the comments about how this is not about free trade.
Yeah.
And I'm not by any means trying to support the Auto Worker Union or anything like that, or tariffs in general. But I think if you're going to talk about a geopolitical situation and why we have tariffs in the first place, and just directly related to the comment of how through the back door and how I think Trump was right about how it's going to benefit China, I do believe China is going to benefit by these countries that will now be part of the TPP buying things from China, like cheap steel, manufactured parts, already stamped parts, bring them over to, let's say, Vietnam, produced or assembled there, and then shipped into the TPP realm. And I think that's going to affect not only the USA, but I think it's also going, and I think it's going to affect the USA. I think it's going to also affect Japan, which they're very big in car manufacturing. Maybe not a bad way. Japanese are fairly, their auto manufacturing is fairly exported already as it is.
Yeah, they've got high tariffs.
Right, they got high tariffs, and we brought them into the fold by with agriculture subsidies and whatnot. We brought them into the deal, but that's how I think that China is going to benefit. They're going to get around their tariffs coming to the United States by going through other countries. So by parking some of their supplies in another country, they're going to get it to America without the tariffs. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, indirectly or directly. However, I do think that Trump was right about talking about how it's going to benefit China, because the source laws are so weak. There's so much room for wiggle room that anybody you can manipulate the numbers fairly easily.
Okay. Well, yeah, I can't argue the fact of the benefit, but another quote from Trump, which they used, was that China would take advantage of us, and that implies a zero-sum game
Mm.
And I'd like to point out that, just as we have high tariffs against China, they have high tariffs against us. So the same can be said about our products, because
Oh yeah.
we actually export as well. And even though on balance of payments, we import more than we export, when you just look at export numbers, we are right behind China in the world. It's China, the U.S., and then Germany. It's just we
Yeah.
import more than we export.
Yeah. Third largest economy.
Yeah.
Or exporting economy, yeah. Oh, shit.
Yeah, Germany now. They got knocked off by China and fell behind us. But
Yeah.
and and that's why I'm getting at. Whatever benefit China would have, it's not necessarily zero sum game, because we would be getting the same benefit too. It's us trading through our neighbor because we keep the gates up for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's kind of silly to think about it as we have to. It's kind of like you have two friends, and it's like, hey, I don't want to talk to Jake, so I'm gonna get someone else to talk to him for me. Can you tell Jake to do this? Can you tell Jake that I'm not gonna talk? It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. If you just look at it from that perspective. There's a lot, there's a lot of geopolitical stuff going on. I'm sure there's a lot of things that we don't see. There's a lot of talking and negotiation that we don't see. There's a lot of people, or there's a lot of countries in actual Asia, Southeast Asia, and Asia in general, and they're asking for support or help or a buddy or an ally for support against China, because China's been fairly aggressive. Not to say that we haven't always been aggressive, or Japan hasn't always been posturing, or Vietnam for whatever reason. Sometimes they like China, but generally speaking, they don't like China because they keep getting pushed around by them. So the TPP, it does two things. One, it does align us with people that don't like China. You look at the countries that are involved in this; they're not the biggest supporters of China, and they're kind of trying to get involved in this because they want a little way away from it, but they still want the economic benefits of getting cheap steel, cheap manufacture. They want those things, but they're trying to play both fiddle, and I think that's the reason I have a problem. That's my main problem with the TPP. If it's going to be a trade agreement among countries that want to lower all tariffs, I do believe that we should do that. We should say, okay, any country that wants a serious, free, open trade with us, let's do it. But these are the guidelines. If you're going to have if you're going to do this, then you can't be involved in this. And then, countries like, okay, no, we won't do this, but we'll, our neighbor will do it for us, and we'll just drive the trucks full of their shit across our border, and then we'll ship it to you.
Well, that's another thing. When goods come into any country, we just don't go, well, that's what we want. They are inspected. So, I mean,
yes,
a lot of our problems with China is not so much quality and manufacturing of the goods themselves as, they're drowning their people in smog and things like that.
Right.
But the other half of that is what would it be like without that industry in there, without that industry's growth? And
China.
Yeah, for China or for any country, another one that they like throwing out there is India. Look at how bad their situation is, but it's either manufacturing the sewer grates for New York, or scrounging out there with 3 of their kids trying to maybe get some food together. And a lot of it's just the gross inequality between how far along we progress compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's safe to say, so from the beginning of this conversation, so we had 2 different definitions of backdoor. Is China or these countries necessarily going to be doing anything illegal? I'm sure there'll be some fringe country or some fringe companies on, everyone, there's always going to be assholes in any situation. Any large situation or demographic, there's going to be assholes, right? Are they going to explicitly do anything illegal? Probably not. But you know what? If you're going to have large amounts of manufacturing getting around a tariff, why not take that tariff away? And I feel like this is a big get around to a serious issue that's been going on in America since 1970, let's say, and it's subsidizing people for doing things in an inefficient way. For instance, making cars or pressing steel. We subsidize through tariffs people doing things inefficiently.
Yeah.
Making cars.
It reduces everything down to the lowest denominator within the country.
Right, and I don't want to say the people that are making cars that they're dumb or not or anything, but here's the simple matter: technology has advanced so fast that they've outpaced your education, and they've outpaced what you can do, and robots can take over, and they have to a large degree over the manufacturing, and where where the unions or the country or the state won't allow actual robots to manufacturing line. What do? They put it in through NAFTA. NAFTA was the first real big push. Some of it went to Canada, but they're part of the United Auto Workers Union, or Mexico. Things that couldn't be mechanized because we haven't developed good enough robots and stuff like that. But a large part of it, it's just subsidizing people for doing things a bad way. And I think that's another thing that I've been reading about the TPP is that I do feel that it's in a certain way. I'm not talking about the pharmaceutical laws or the trade patent laws or anything like that, or there was the copyright laws or anything. But I think it's pushing our economy and our people to become higher educated, because we can't constantly just keep putting up tariffs because our people choose not to be higher educated or come up with new ideas or get involved in industries that are part of the future. If we're constantly just putting up tariffs because people just want to put together an engine on an assembly line, since like we've been doing since 1914 or 1909, whatever, with the T model. Yeah. That's what we've been doing for a very long time now, right? But now it's a Ford F-150, but we just keep subsidizing that.
Yeah, and it doesn't help when we've got a government that keeps wanting to inflate the currency and policies of trying to keep raising the minimum wage. Everything's wanting to push it in that direction, and people just don't want to have it. But you can't have advancing completely in the direction of high-tech, high industrialized society, yet somehow also having tons and tons of low-paying jobs at the same time.
Right.
Or equally.
Right. You have to show up to a company very diverse in your education. You have to have a skill that can be modified, and then the company has to continue to reinvest. And the only way they can continue to reinvest is if you don't ask for $60, $70, $80, $90 an hour, plus a month and a half vacation, plus an hour, plus a 15-minute break every hour and a half, and just the list goes on with the auto. I'm directly relating to the Autos Workers Union, how they have destroyed themselves, and now you don't hear about it anymore because they're gone. They have been whittled down through bankruptcy and through them pushing their own jobs out. You can talk to any of them. They don't realize it. Some of them do, but they don't. They're constant pushing for more benefits and more expensive labor that wasn't worth it in the end, because if it was worth it, they would still be around. There would still be Detroit wouldn't be in the situation that it'd be in. They kept pushing for it. And what it led to robots, and which is awesome, and it led to jobs going other places. And I think the TPP kind of addresses that, and it's kind of it's trying to put us up on a pedestal and allowing us to export. Like you were saying, you want to go over how about our exports to these countries and how they've been dropping?
Oh yeah, I mean, just in the last year, we used to be trading around like 431 million with Brunei, one of the countries in the TPP.
Mm-hmm.
And that's already dropped down by around like $340 million worth of trade.
Yeah, it's yeah.
And that's pretty much been the trade. The only one country in the TPP that we've stayed neutral with is Peru at 2.9 billion. And the only country that we've actually improved, even though we're still mainly importing than exporting, is actually Canada. And, the oil shale boom is pretty much
Right.
the big idea with that, because Canada was actually our biggest importer of oil.
Right. So, just for everyone that doesn't know, I'm sure you do if you're watching this. Part of the TPP countries that are in negotiations or are going to be involved. They said they're good to go. Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, U.S., and Vietnam. Now there are a long list of countries in the Pacific Rim area that have said they are interested in the actual TPP themselves. Those countries and myself have a lot in common. They like to sit back, see how things develop, and then make a move. They want to see, well, let's just see what happens to these people trade and how it actually all levels out. Because how many pages is the actual TPP themselves?
Uh, it's over 5,000. It's somewhere around 5,500, 5,600 pages, give or take.
So 55. Let's just say 5,500 pages of trade agreements written by lawyers and economists, and it's very tricky. And there's going to be a lot of get arounds. There's going to be a lot of confusion. You're talking about millions and millions of tons of goods coming in and out of ports, being unloaded and unloaded onto boats, and then spreading it through economies and online ordering. And there's going to be it's a big mix up. But there's a lot of countries that are still interested. So again, like Trump was saying, that how it's going to benefit China is they could come into the negotiation later. Is that necessarily a bad thing? That's for you to decide how evil you really think China is. How bad is the hammer and sickle? That's for you to decide. But can they enter the agreement? I'm going to say that they're actually not going to enter the agreement because, and this is the main reason why, a lot of the countries that have entered, such as Brunei, Malaysia, Peru, Mexico, Vietnam, okay, these countries are going to replace China as the manufacturing areas. China has a large manufacturing area, and two reasons are going to drive these companies to move to these countries and manufacture. One, China's middle class is rising very quickly. Their wages are rising very quickly, and that's been their biggest export the last 10 years is their cheap labor. And these other countries are going to replace that. And now with the no tariffs and other special things they get through the TPP, they're going to replace China. And I think that was a big part of the actual TPP themselves, is taking a lot of manufacturing power away from China.
Well, that's definitely a reason for the other countries wanting to keep China out, so they can do the low workforce pool. But that's another thing. They're already one of the reasons we would have lowered those origination values to that 40% is because these are already countries where we had very, very little to any real trade going on.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they were already kind of flooded with Chinese products. But China's a very interesting situation. Do you want to talk about the currency manipulation too? Because that's the kind of the unsilent half that Trump brought up to the whole trade debate.
Right. Yeah. Everyone. So everyone needs a boogeyman, and we're very politics in general is very hypocritical in this country because they want to talk about how evil other countries are for many different things that we do. But one, for China, it's been the currency manipulation. So they talk about how China manipulates their currency. Now, by manipulating their currency, meaning they are devaluating their currency. They're inflating their currency. They're printing more money or printing more money. Really what they're doing is sending companies in their country through wires money in their bank accounts, and then they can spend it. That's devaluating their currency. Now, does America do that? Well, you heard of QE1.
Yeah.
You heard of QE2 and 3, and then 4, 5. It's going to keep going, right? So that is devaluation of currency. Now, why did we do that? Well, there's always a different reason, but the main reason it was for the large exporting corporations. Every time that we devalue our currency, it makes it cheaper for other countries that their currency, if their currency stays the same, to buy their products. That's why it's really awesome to go backpacking in Southeast Asia because the US dollar is so strong compared to those countries. Now, if the US dollar devaluates a lot, I'm not going to go backpacking in Southeast Asia because it's going to get more expensive. And that's the same way that, and that's why you devalue, because as you devalue, it's easier for other people to either come into your country and buy stuff or just buy stuff and bring it back to theirs.
Yeah, it's very easy for the low market acquisition. It's very easy. It simulates what China has right now, which is the low wage labor market. But then in economics, there's always trade-offs, and the trade-off is when you keep your dollar that low, it discourages capital, it discourages saving, and it discourages investment, which is kind of the other half of it. One of my reasons why I think China's being a little bit more aggressive with their military now with patrols is because they're not getting that investment. They're really not. All their growth right now has been simply through printing money at the press and acquiring it from other countries and just building it there, not the maintenance, not the upkeep.
Right. Yeah, they only can do so much. You only can print so much until it starts having a serious negative effect. You kind of have to do it in spurts, to say, I guess, if you will. And that's why we've had QE1, QE2, QE3, and they space it out because the Federal Reserve gives this money to the banks, and then they let the banks either buy up property. And that's another thing about currency manipulation and inflation is it doesn't help any middle class or lower income person. It hurts them a lot. Now, for somebody that is not middle class, let's say upper class, and I'm totally doing the class warfare right now. Quite simply, it is the truth that currency manipulation helps people that are largely invested in stocks and real estate, because as your dollar devalues, it costs more money to buy, let's say, one share of a company or a house. And if you're invested in these things are inflation proof.
Well, not inflation proof, but yeah, they hold value better than the dollar.
Yeah. Than just sitting in a bank account that's earning only like 1.1%, or canned food, that costs 89 cents, but now it costs 91 cents, 92 cents. It's a creep. It's not oh my gosh, the prices went up yesterday. It's a slow creep. But by the time the money gets down to people, their wages don't increase with inflation. Generally speaking,
taxes do.
Their taxes do. Generally speaking, their wages stay the same, and then with immigration and cheap labor flooding into the country. America in general is staying the same. But yeah, so currency manipulation. We're hypocrites. We want to talk about how China does it, and that's evil. But people that we're trading with, like Japan, has been notorious lately for currency manipulation. They have done some major stimulus packages lately. And though they're part of the TPP, they're one of the biggest supporters of the TPP, and a lot of people think that for a couple reasons. One, and that's why we're liberalizing our treaties with them to allow them to start having a bigger self-defense force. They're changing their actual declaration, their
Constitution, so they can build up their military.
Right, and so they can actually go to war outside of Japan. A lot of people say it might be might kind of be like the strong arm of America or the Western world in Asia, much like what the Japanese wanted in World War II. They wanted to dominate Asia. The Japanese and American people have a lot in common, or they had the same interests anyway in World War II, and that's the only reason we went to war. It wasn't over Pearl Harbor; it was over domination of Southeast Asia. But can't say.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to talk about how it was over Pearl Harbor, but Pearl Harbor was just kind of the tipping point. That war was going to happen no matter what.
Yeah, it was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Thank you. Yeah. So anyways, that's what people believe TPP is, and that's why Japan. This was not going to go anywhere without Japan. All those other countries could have been involved. It wasn't going to happen unless Japan was involved. And as you see the simultaneous buildup of things going on with Japan, it's pretty clear what's happening over there. And just one more reason that Japan's going down to the South China Sea. What business does Japan have in the South China Sea? They don't have anything down there other than popping out their chests. That's it. It is. It's a long-ass cruise from southern tip of Japan all the way to the South China Sea. It's a long flight, let alone on a boat.
Yeah, and as last time I understood it, it wasn't so much as them being proactive going out there as they would be able to be proactive for like a joint task force or something, because in their constitution they pretty much specifically state we will not use our military to go anywhere unless it touches Japan's soil.
Right. Yeah. And China and Japan have actually had some conflicts over some really small, insignificant islands. I mean, they're insignificant to me. I don't know how much honor and respect it really brings the Japanese people. But so these islands were owned by an individual, and China laid claim to them. However, this individual sold them to the government of Japan with the rights and everything. This could be a conspiracy theory. I don't know. I'm sure there's one out there for it. So, but China has consistently tried to claim those. And Japanese Air Force, Self-Defense Force, has launched several times against Chinese fighters going around those islands as their airspace. So this is another really, really silly thing. It's a pissing contest, pretty much. You're talking about a very insignificant piece of land that no one lives on, and is not good for anything. It's not even a sweet vacation spot.
What? No one's harboring to go to the South China Sea?
Right, and these islands aren't necessarily in the South China Sea, but they're anyways.
Yeah, it's more like northeast of that, but
so that's another thing with the TPP. So as you can see, there's a lot of angles. Obviously, with such a large trade agreement, such a large percent of the world's GDP, the actual bulk trade, there's a lot involved with it. There's going to be a lot of different angles. A lot of it's economic, some of it's political, geopolitical. You want to go into about the secretiveness of all this?
Well, yeah, that's always a big turnoff, especially with a lot of the things that they've done specifically for the U.S., with the whole Patriot Act and all that. But, yeah, and I know part of it is, like you said, it's the geopolitics because three of the main concerns with like China, especially early on, because they were touting the narrative, well, the U.S. is not inviting us, graciously enough to this TPP treaty, so they're trying to contain us. And there's that geopolitics and the fears where somehow they would sneak into it. They would pressure some of these other countries to put little provisions here and there so that, there's a little wink and stepping aside as they walk by. There was the strong arm. Would they try to flex their military and economic might and openly force their ways and be controversial and maybe even break the treaty happening, which with their military posturing right now, gets a lot of hearts aflutter. And then the third one was, of course, well, could they just keep running it because they are part of that large export for these goods that at some point every country is wanting to control, and they've been doing it all along. Lobbying, that's another one. That's probably one of the main reasons why they're doing this round to keep those tariffs off, because lobbying groups, how do we keep getting that money? We got to pay our lip service to them and our signing service with the different tariffs and agreements we make for those companies. But, we still need trade. How can we do that? We do the runaround.
Right.
And, any good conspiracy theories you've heard about it? I saw one on WikiLeaks with the whole New World Order. They lined that one up with the Atlantic Agreement and some other one that's like Inter-Asia or Inter-American Agreement, and more New World Order, more conveniently leaving out Brazil and China trying to take over the world types of stuff. Anything you've heard regarding that?
Yeah, so there's another trade agreement that has to do with South America, all of South America, and it's trying to pull more people away from Brazil. I think it's SDA. I'm sorry, I wasn't ready for that one, but yeah. So
it's the TTIP, I think, is what it.
Yeah, TTIP is for Europe. Is the EU joining with NAFTA essentially, and then you'll have the TPP, which will have the RIM countries join into essentially into one, right? So you'll have this large sphere of trade that has been built largely in secret. Now, the only time I do anything in secret is, generally speaking, is when I'm up to no good or I'm trying to surprise someone. Okay? Now, how many times throughout history has government ever done anything in secret and then they opened up the box?
It was a good surprise.
It's a surprise, and everyone was like, woo! This is freaking awesome. Now, at first, everyone does say it's freaking awesome. 20 years down the road, there is, generally speaking, a very large argument over how to fix this catastrophe. Okay, we saw it with the Affordable Care Act when it was, well, we need to pass it, Nancy Pelosi, we need to pass it to see what's in it. So now we have it's a disaster, still a point of conflict. Whatever side you stand on, I'm sure most people don't stand on either side other than for politics. Most people don't know anything about healthcare, but they still have a very large voice on it for some reason. So now we have the TPP, which has been negotiating for several years now. Some say 10 years, up to 10 years has been negotiated in secret. Congress, people in the trade committees and people that could read the TPP have been sworn to secrecy. They were not allowed to come out in public and talk about directly laws and tariffs and things like this from the TPP. They were not allowed to come out and talk about it. If it's such an awesome deal, it was so great. It's going to be so great. It's so great. We're not even going to tell you about it because you'll lose your mind how great it is. So just, yeah, go back to sleep. We got it. So it's just no one buys that, right? No one buys that. And another thing that's very interesting to me is you have people from both sides of, you have people that you have Bernie Sanders talking about how bad the TPP is. You have Donald Trump talking about how bad the TPP is. How does anyone think this is going to be good when you have these two people, which are complete opposite and have said very mean things about each other, agree on this? I mean, that's something that's scary when you have politicians agreeing about how bad something is from both sides of the aisle, so to speak. What do you think about that?
I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate with this because
Oh man, don't get me fired up.
this is a large intercontinental treaty. It's not just us agreeing with maybe 1, 2, or 3 countries, as a lot of them besides NAFTA have been in the past. So there's that component to it, because again, we're talking about geopolitical struggles here, and we're also talking about companies and lobbying groups. If you're going to start supporting cutting a certain tariff, let's say supporting sugar or something, that's going to perk up some ears and get you some backlash, and maybe derail the whole thing depending on how much that backlash is.
Yeah.
And I'll say from the start, I don't agree with the secrecy in general, but then there's the other point. The reason why Bernie Sanders and Trump agree in this particular field is if you talk about anything as regards to trade, they're always saying tariffs, 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 tariffs.
Oh, that's a good point. Yep, that's a really good point. You're right. They're both protectionists.
But Rand is showing caution. If I remember correctly, my senators from Alabama, they're showing a little bit of caution, and that does worry me. The only good thing I can think of, comparing to your argument with the health care bill, is they're actually giving us some days to read it before they finally completely sign off on it. Wasn't quite that way with the Patient Care Act. It was, as you quoted Pelosi, we got to pass it to see what's in it.
Yeah. And it was people weren't allowed to. It was an all or nothing. You have to vote on it. We can't break down the actual agreement, and they can't talk about it. And I think that was. I don't necessarily believe that was a bad thing to let this bill that has been worked on through foreign relations go into a Congress that's so dysfunctional, and because everyone's going to have their special interests.
Yeah.
Again, you're going to have people that want tariffs or this, they don't like that, or this and that, and then it's going to say no. So it was vote on it, all or nothing. So again, I don't know. I don't want to say I agree with it, but if I work on
it could have been handled better.
It could have been handled better. Yeah, it could have been handled better. But if I work on something for, let's say, Obama's been in office for 8 years. So let's just say 8 years. Let's say 6 years, 5 years, 4 years. You work on something with so many different countries, right? You're gonna throw it into that. Might as well throw it into a blender. I don't necessarily blame him for trying to push it. Hey, vote on it, all or nothing.
I think as far as handling with the secrecy thing, just more time. This is a huge agreement. It's involving multiple countries and all this, and the part that really bites about it is it's always these groups that are fishing it out. It's not they're going, look, we're working on this trade agreement with these other countries. We're not getting into specifics right now, but it's in the works. It's, WikiLeaks has found in some email or some backdoor program that these documents, and look, they're talking about this, and that that kind of instills that bad faith, makes it seem more like it's the bad thing instead of the surprise.
Yeah. So, and by the way, these things that we're talking about, we're going to try to link as much as we can in the bottom of this video. But real quick, the agreement that had to do with South America, it's not necessarily just South America. It's a TISA, Trade and Service Agreement. So it pretty much is just another overlapping between NAFTA, Europe, the Pacific Rim partners, and again, it involves a number of countries, and it's actually starting to include Pakistan, Turkey, Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia, people that were not involved in these other trade agreements. It's just trying to link it all together. I'm seeing an axis building. I'm seeing an axis building against two of our largest geopolitical opponents, which most trade agreements are about that. Ever since World War II, most trade agreements have been about with your allies against Russia and China. So it just kind of it's kind of what's left, I guess, of our manufacturing base. And in World War II, we were half of the world's economy, half. We built everything, we made everything, everyone bought everything from us, and over the years, that's dwindled down because other people's, people have rebuilt their economy after the war. Europe rebuilt very quickly. Within 20 years, they were manufacturing goods, building really high-end technology and whatnot. East Asia has now come around to manufacturing textiles and things, or even putting together iPhones. And I think America's still striving to stay on top geopolitically. So there's a balance of power. It's this is the way I see it. It's how many people are we willing to sacrifice their jobs and car manufacturing or textiles or whatever middle of the road job they have. How many jobs are we willing to lose to control other countries' trade? And that's kind of how I see it, because we're going to lose jobs through these deals. We always do, and that's just how it is. People can do the same thing as you, but for a quarter of the price. So, but we enter these deals not directly for the benefit of the people. We enter these deals for benefit of the government and how they can manipulate other countries, buy votes in the UN and the WTO. I think that's it.
Yeah.
We're controlling the trade routes. We're controlling where these people or where these countries how they can get into U.S. markets, and then we're also pushing goods on them. We're pushing these high-end agriculture products through like chemicals and GMO seeds, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, things that we can still produce here profitably.
Yeah, it's when it comes to trade and everything, there's always the fact that some jobs will be lost, but others will be gained. And the thing that I just really dislike about the whole governmental structure is that we're essentially putting it in their hands to decide that.
Right.
That's why I don't like tariffs to begin with, is because you're saying these jobs are so important. Not only are we going to charge the consumers more in order to keep those jobs,
Right.
but the government can get its cut of it, and that means we can impede these other areas and markets that, if we just let the free market happen,
They'll improve.
they would have expanded.
Yep. I think I couldn't agree with you more there. I do, and it goes down to special interests. Why do we have sugar tariffs? Well, because farmers in Florida want the tariff, and they're centralized and they're focused. Their beam of money is focused. So everyone pays more for sugar. They do it in Japan with rice. People in Japan pay way more for rice than what they need to because they protect their farmers. Yeah, I agree, because we say these jobs are so important. Well, that impedes growth of technology and efficiency in those areas. You look at agriculture, which over the years, you look at from where we started, where we had to import people to do jobs. We had to have slavery to make it profitable to actually produce these things like cotton and a lot of agriculture. To then, okay, now we have the cotton gin, so now we don't necessarily need slavery. So and it's, you know what, we're in a civil war, so maybe we can start a small uprising in the South, so we'll free slaves. That's actually how it happened. Everybody, it had nothing to do because Abraham Lincoln liked black people. I just want to throw that out there. And then and it just keeps continuing. And if you think about how cheap labor keeps coming into the country and how it's stopping the advancement of agriculture. If you look at, the automotive people have gotten too expensive, so they started developing robots to do it. Yeah, I can't agree with you more.
Yeah, and there's also the fight for the 15 trend that's going on, and we're starting to see all those nice fast food kiosks.
Yeah, okay, that's that. Okay, yeah, I'm glad because that is the biggest one right now is the fight for the 15. And not that I don't want to see people get $15 an hour, but I really would hate to tell you that, I don't hate to tell you, I'm just going to tell you right now, you flipping burgers or, in a fast food assembly line in shit food don't deserve, or you don't earn $15 an hour. You just don't. It's not worth it. And if you keep it up, you're going to end up just like the auto workers union. You're going to end up just like the auto manufacturing. It's going to be gone, and I'm going to have a kiosk, and I'm just going to walk up, and I'm going to say, okay, I want a double with no pickles, no mustard, medium size, and everything's going to be, it's going to be largely automated.
Yeah,
not just tellers, but it's going to be like, they're going to have a soda. I mean, have you seen the soda machines now? You walk up and you can get a Coke, but there's 9 different flavors of Coke you can have. It's all going to slide right onto a tray. Central, boom, and then it's going to be put right in front of you, and there's going to be 3 or 4 people behind the counter.
Yeah, instead of complaining about customer service, you'll be complaining why they don't have a scroll feature for the window.
Right. It just people, and it's sad because they're doing it to themselves, and they're frustrated because they were put in they were put into a shit government school that taught them very little. They didn't have a choice to leave. They had to go every single day. If they didn't, they would be taken away from their family. Their parents would be fined or arrested. So you had to get that education, and that education gave you nothing. And this is the only opportunity you have. And they also don't understand about income climbing, and there's a lot of economics they don't understand about how you build a reputation, you build worth. Companies aren't going to hire you right off the bat if you have no work experience. You don't understand that you can't call in sick every time you just don't feel like going to work. You have to show a reputation. You have to show your worth. But I don't know. I did fine when working, and that's another thing is, well, you can't survive on $7.50 an hour, $8.50 an hour. I got a family to feed. It's like, okay, well, educate yourself or find a trade or a job or a trade or something that can get you into a higher income bracket. McDonald's is not supposed to be a lifelong career. Now, people do make it a lifelong career because they become managers and they buy franchises and things of this nature, but you're not supposed to try to provide for a family on that. It is hard. It would be hard to provide for a family on $7.50 an hour. It's very challenging.
Yeah, but again, it comes to the question: is it because they are devaluing you for your work, or is it because that work is not valued?
Right.
And that's one of the things people, especially because of our government, we're getting to where we're tending not to want to change with things. And like you said, with the educational system, you're forced to sit in a room and maybe pay attention half the time. That doesn't really induce someone to want to be creative or learn something or be passionate about something or realize the trade-offs of what their time is worth when you can just be placed into some place for X amount of time and, well, there you have it.
Right, you walk across stage and you have a diploma, and there you go. And again, it goes back to it kind of goes back to the whole tariff thing. You're subsidizing people for doing things a bad way. You're subsidizing people for doing things inefficiently. It's not efficient to pay someone $15 an hour to make burgers. At this point, you're going to have a group of nerds, and I say that with actual respect because it does take a group of nerds to do this, something way above my Intel level, to make a robot, to make a hamburger assembly line, as silly as that sounds, but it's going to happen. Because you know why? Even if they get to $15 an hour, you know what's coming next? $20 an hour.
Yeah.
Month vacation.
People wanting to raise up the floor while people are working to close down the ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's ridiculous, and yeah, I mean, you see it in Canada already with the kiosks. You're seeing them pop up in America. It's just, it really is. It's silly. It's silly, you know. And a lot of these people that are complaining they can't live off $15 or minimum wage is, well, they're like, well, like I said, it's an entry-level job, and also they have kids.
Yeah.
They have kids prematurely before marriage, before they have a career, you know, and it can be done because other people have done it. So for the love of God, I don't go to fast food that much anymore. Anyways, the only time I go to fast food is when it's like utterly convenient and I just don't have time to make my own food.
Yeah.
And this is just one more reason why I won't go. You know, right after, oh man, what was that? McDonald's, remember the guy ate for 30 days?
Yeah, the Super Size Me.
Super Size Me. Right after that, so I watched Super Size Me. I was like, oh God, I'm not gonna go to McDonald's. I'm gonna go to Burger King. And then, and now this, it's just like it's making me want to take a political stand against the stupidity of people working at these places. And then, by the way, I know not everyone at freaking McDonald's or fast food wants $15 an hour, think they deserve it, but you know, when you have every McDonald's shutting down in New York because everyone's marching, or Washington State because they're marching for $15 an hour, it makes me want to just go buy a salad or something from a super vegan store.
Yeah, and another part of it that they don't realize is that, yeah, it sounds good on paper, but either people are going to get fired,
right?
Prices are going to rise, or work schedules are going to get broader with more shift changes. Because that value of the work hasn't changed, or all three will happen in some case. I have a few friends that work with Walmart, and after that recent increase to $9 standard for their wages, a lot of them had to start working on the loading docks.
Yeah.
As well as doing whatever else they were doing.
It's be a lot less lull time. It's going to be work during the hectic hours and then get the hell out with the crowd, with the lunch crowd. As soon as the lunch crowd leaves, get out.
Yeah.
So these are some things. I know we got off topic several times, but they're good conversations. You know, we're not just talking about football or whatever, but what have you. Sorry, let me change that. We're not talking about soccer here. I don't want to leave viewers off in America, but anyways.
Fired.
So let's do like a quick conversation. Where do we think the TPP is going to lead?
Basic idea right now, from what I understand it, the one good thing I see, especially how China is talking more friendly about joining the deal, is maybe in 5 years, if nothing happens, tensions might calm down a little bit, because that'll give time for them to, work their legal mojo to make the deal a little bit more palatable for them. It'll give the other countries more time to adjust their ideas of what the trade schedules are. Hopefully, it might encourage China to stop undervaluing their currency so they can get a little bit of that investment that they're looking for and stop pressing their military a little bit so much. So as long as there's no hidden bags of poop hidden in there, it looks at least better than what it was.
Yeah, some stink bombs going off. Yeah. And I think that, yeah, that's a pretty good, I think that's a really good outline of what the future could hold. I think that's definitely one scenario. I think that you could, my opinion, you could directly relate it to look what happened with NAFTA. It's a very similar situation. I guess we entered into an agreement with mainly Mexico that had very low wages.
Yeah.
And so you saw a lot of jobs initially flood out, but you saw other jobs develop, like service jobs, and you saw a lot of white-collar jobs develop. You saw a lot of high industry, high technology develop. Now, eventually those jobs always do end up, once they get good enough at it, in lower wage areas, right? Because they're not going to just continuously keep building these factories or whatever in Silicon Valley, just because that's where they come up with these apps and the software. You know, they put it other places, but if you can stay ahead of the curve, or even with the curve, and you continue to upgrade your education, or you get an education in something that is fairly flexible, like engineering or you know, the sciences, I think that you can benefit. However, I think if you don't adapt, and then also the government keeps subsidizing you through unemployment payments and welfare and all the subsidies you can get when you lose your job because your job left, and then, you know, you can't really find another one putting things together because other people in other countries can put it together cheaper than you. I think it's gonna. I think you're gonna suffer, and I think that's what we're gonna see more of. I think a lot of people are gonna lose their jobs, but you're gonna see corporations benefit a lot. I think you're going to see large corporations benefit through selling these chemical products and whatnot. But if you can get a field in those products, you're going to do very well. And I'm sure the fields will expand, like chemicals, pharmaceuticals. Agriculture was a really big part of this, really big part of the export.
Refined petroleum products. You know, we import a lot of crude oil, but we outgas it when it comes to the refined products.
Right, yeah, we can refine things very well here. So yeah, we're going to see a really big uptick there. I think, but I think if America wants to stay on top like it has been for the past 70 years, I think it's going to take a couple things. The list is long, but mainly I think the education in this country is going to have to drastically improve. I think that's been a large reason why Germany has been so successful with such a small population, not necessarily a large amount of resources compared to, let's say, America or China. And I think that's why they've been doing so well, is because their entire population is educated, and they continuously develop these jobs and these technologies that keeps them at the forefront, and everybody wants their technology and their products. And they do a really good job at exporting.
Yeah.
Other countries cannot, again, keep up with what they got. So I think education is the #1 importance for this country, is continually to update your education and be knowledgeable. And I myself have been trying to work on that because I am behind the curve for what I have to offer in general. So I have been working on that. I think it starts from elementary school on up. We have a broken education system. I think that continuously affects and drags down the economy. Next, I would say is the fact that if you don't want to adapt, Darwinism never kicks in, and there's always someone to steal from to support it.
Yeah.
You get a job in there, you get a degree in something that doesn't turn to anything, and you can go on unemployment for 99 weeks or whatever it is right now. It fluctuates with whoever's standing in Congress, but
yeah, and it's even worse than that because it's not so much just the support as also a trap, because, you know, there are going to be people that are going to get down on their luck and have to tap into it every now and then,
Right.
But that severe cutoff between being on that welfare support and then trying to have a job to maintain your life is it's severe.
It is very severe. And I think there is I mean, for instance, if you're pulling a paycheck right now, you're paying into the unemployment insurance program. You're paying into it. So to say that you get laid off or you're in between jobs, people say, "Oh, I'm in between jobs." Okay, fine. Let's just say that you paid into the system. I guess people would say you pay into the system. Okay, you take a little back. But yeah, like you said, habitual unemployment is it's addicting because once you get used to the lifestyle, you can just be there forever.
Yeah, I guess we pretty much covered the topic and then some.
Yeah, well, that's why it's labeled what it's labeled. Just a discussion. It's not really a PowerPoint walkthrough or anything like that.
We kept to a main theme.
Right. Yeah. So we're sitting at a pretty good time right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut it. But again, we'll throw as much links below as we can. Go ahead and comment and tell us what you think about it, what you think the TPP will lead to, what you feel about the secrecy. And go ahead and throw a conspiracy theory or two down there. Let's talk about it. I'll reply. Jake will reply, and we'll see what we can get going. So again, I'm Kyle Mason.
And I'm Jake Bird, and happy to be here and see y'all again.
All right, thanks for watching.